Due to the recent anniversary of the overthrow of Roe v. Wade, the vice president's Instagram page has become a cesspool of the worst pro choice talking points. I exist to help you respond with wisdom and virtue to the ideas of our age, and this video is devoted to demolishing the lowest and most puerile arguments for abortion. Let's dive directly into it.
The highest court in our land just took a constitutional right that had been recognized from the women of America, from the people of America. Because what they did with that ruling is they said, essentially, a woman does not have the right to make decisions about her own body.
Several points. Number one, that decision overturning Roe v. Wade simply sent the question back to the states. It did not decide the question overall. Second, she talks about making decisions with your own body. This isn't only affecting your body. How many hearts does a woman have? Not two. So whenever they remove one heart from a woman during abortion, then you have to ask, how did she not die? Unless, of course, it wasn't her heart to begin with. She doesn't have 20 fingers, she doesn't have 20 toes, and yet they removed 10 of each. So unless she is now fingerless and toeless, it must have been somebody else's body that was impacted. And we have lots of laws affecting what you do with your body whenever it affects the bodies of other people. You can't drink and drive. You can't even drink in 43 states if you're pregnant because it affects your soon-to-be born baby.
And here's the thing that I have to say, Kiki, because I think it's so important on this subject. One does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree that the government should not be telling her what to do with her body.
You know, she's really made me reconsider some things with that last argument. I deeply believe that it's wrong to steal from one another. But who am I to vote for policies that would result in the government telling women or men that they can't steal from one another? I mean, it's certainly not as bad as, say, killing your own children. And so why would I enforce that level of morality on anybody else? Yeah.
Extremist Republicans in Congress have proposed to ban abortion nationwide. Nationwide.
Do you remember whenever extremist was used for, say, terrorists, people who would blow themselves up in the pursuit of their political interests? Notice how easily they throw it around for people who just disagree with them. Keep in mind that the last thing that we just looked at was her saying that Congress needs to amend the Constitution in order to enshrine Roe v. Wade. So if it's extremist for Republicans to want national level action on this issue, how does it not make them extremists? Asking for logical consistency out of Democrats is like asking a cat to bark.
The United States Congress must pass legislation to restore the protections of Roe v. Wade.
Goodness, I didn't even know that it was going to come up in this exact same clip. Yes, while she's castigating Republicans for wanting to nationalize their policy as extremists, surely that would apply to them as well, right? The Biden-Harris administration's actions to protect reproductive rights. Here's another one. If they say reproductive rights, realize that when a person is pregnant, reproduction has already occurred. I agree that you should be able to choose whether or not you're going to reproduce. You should be able to choose when you're going to reproduce. But once you have reproduced, I do not believe you should be able to kill that individual child. And the idea of calling that a right is so Orwellian. Rights are born out of nature. They're born out of our design, our telos. They're imbued to us by God. And if you don't believe in that, then at minimum, you'd have to say that they're granted to us by our government. And yet there's nothing in the Constitution that even hints at the idea. Here's what they've done. Number one, issued 3 executive orders to safeguard access to abortion and contraception. That's what Biden has done. Just a quick little point here. If you are a Catholic priest and you are not pushing for the excommunication of Joe Biden, then I don't know what you're doing with your office. He's using his office to push for the slaughter of the innocent. Are you using your office to push for the sanctity and sacredness of human life? In the face of that, they established the President's Interagency Task Force on Reproductive Healthcare Access. Reproductive healthcare is another one of these Orwellian terms like a ministry of truth. Healthcare means to restore health, means to bring about right function. Abortion does not restore right health to either the pregnant woman or to the child in her womb. P.S. The word child is just Old English for fetus. So whenever you say, no, it's not a child, it's a fetus. Right, it's the same thing. Protected access to care, including medication, abortion, and emergency medical care. Nobody's removing emergency medical care, but yes, there are laws against medication abortion because it's still abortion, supported women's ability to travel across state lines for care. I don't know. What does that even mean? Supported their ability to, did you pass out like gas cards or something? Develop new resources to provide timely and accurate information about care and your rights. Again, it's not care. You're not taking care of the baby, you're killing it.
So that day, the day that the Supreme Court took a constitutional right from the women of America,
It's not a constitutional right. It was never seen as a constitutional right for the vast majority of American history.
and my first thoughts really were about our daughter, my niece, my baby nieces, my goddaughters, and what this all might mean. I mean,
Oh gosh, the idea of invoking the children that you didn't abort, the perversity and the wickedness involved here. Like, oh no, my kid can't kill their kids.
for our daughter, she is going to know fewer constitutional rights than my mother-in-law.
Even if you take her side of the story that this is a constitutional right, it would be one, it wouldn't be many. They have to constantly inflate it. They're taking away your constitutional rights, not one, not a single one, but many, because the whole job of the government is to scare you into voting for them. If the government ever were to convince you that you didn't need them, then they would be out of many of their jobs.
1 year later, the majority of Americans are with us. From so-called red states to blue states, from Kentucky to California, when this issue was on the ballot in the midterms, the people voted in favor of allowing women to have the choice about what happens to their body.
That's actually largely true, and that's why this fight is not over. Listen, if you are still pro-choice, you have to ask some really fundamental questions, and you need to dig down and determine which side is correct. Those questions would be, when does human life begin? 95% of all biologists agree that human life begins at conception. Most of those, 80% of those biologists, are pro-choice. So there's no ideological bias here. The second question is very simple. You have to ask which humans have human rights. If it is all humans, then abortion is immediately ruled out as a moral atrocity. If not all humans have human rights, then you have to be very careful. And you have to really, before you really take this position, you better be very clear as to which humans don't have human rights. Because I'm pretty certain that any standard you lay out will not only apply to the fetus, they'll apply to other people as well. Which is why a lot of you will say, well, the personhood. You need to know the people who forwarded and initiated the personhood argument against, abortion or for abortion, they also believe it's okay to kill infants because infants don't have personhood either in that same sort of sense. They don't have that full sense of self-awareness. So if you want to avoid those types of conclusions, you are going to have to become pro-life.
Please. President Biden and I will not stop fighting to make sure that every woman has the right and the choice to make decisions about her own body.
If Aaron Sorkin were dead, he'd be rolling over in his grave. Can you imagine Jed Bartlett saying the right and the choice to make decisions? It's so redundant. I mean, don't they have speechwriters?
You'll remember years ago, Brittany, when I was in the United States Senate and asked somebody, can you tell me of any law that tells a man what to do with his body?
Oh my goodness, that tone is so grating. Oh, yes, there are lots of laws that tell men what they can do with their body whenever what he's doing with his body affects the body of someone else. You can't beat your own kids. You can't commit murder. You can't neglect people. You cannot drink and drive. In the same way, women cannot kill their own offspring. They cannot drink themselves senseless whenever they're pregnant. You can't take all forms of drugs in the nation. There are tons of laws that affect all of our bodies, as there should be. You should not be able to do whatever you want with your body because that inevitably affects other people because we live in a civilization.
With one decision, millions of women lost the fundamental freedom to make decisions about their own health and their future.
In 1973, one decision led to the slaughter of nearly 70 million innocent human beings. Yes, one decision makes a big difference.
We have worked to make sure patients who have miscarriages receive the medical care they need.
There's not a single anti-abortion state where you cannot have an already dead child removed from your womb. If they tragically pass away already, you can have them removed in every one of those states. But what you cannot do is intentionally kill them before having them removed.
This week, I'm proud to sign the third Reproductive Health Care Executive Order, which strengthens access to affordable, high-quality contraception.
This executive order,
All contraception is deeply affordable. I mean, it is dirt cheap. You can, This is so stupid. It's like people have never purchased birth control or a condom before.
Contraception is an essential part of reproductive health care. More important than ever, as a woman's health is under attack across the country, it's needed.
Together.
Who's attacking women's health? Who? We don't want you killing your babies. Therefore, we're attacking their health. If I were to read this as charitably as possible, I would assume that what they're trying to talk about here are the few cases where people claim, though they're not correct, that abortion is necessary for the survival of the mother. Ignoring the fact that that's simply wrong, let's say, okay, what percentage is that? It's less than 1% of women who claim that they got an abortion to protect their own life. There are a lot more inane arguments to be knocked down, but for now, we'll go ahead and we'll cut it off there. This is Unsafe Media, and my name is Ryan Martin. If you're the kind of person who has not joined my Patreon yet, you're probably also the kind of person who thinks that it's a valid argument to say that the fetus is just a clump of cells. For real, people say that. Join the Patreon, like, share, subscribe, and until next time, trust in God and keep your powder dry.